Hey friends, David Lightbringer here, in the studio but mostly off camera today because frankly we're here to talk about this amazing Targaryen Tapestry. And also because you saw my shining face at the after party for like 2 hours with Grey Waste Tim and Girl Nettles. And by the way, thank you to everyone who came out. We had great attendance, had a great time, so check that out in the video feed if you want the full episode discussion. But yeah, today we're here to talk about this tapestry, break it down. It's got 11 scenes which document the history of House Targaryen going all the way back to the founding of the freehold of Valyria, and I'm going to try to add insight to, I don't know, at least 7 or 8 of them, so we'll see. No, I'm kidding, but at the very least, House of the Dragon is, once again, dropping strong clues about the Dragonbond, just as they did with Daemon's song that he sang to Vermithor. So I'm pretty excited about that, and of course, check out my Daemon song video for a longer discussion about the Dragonbond. We're going to get into it today, so don't you worry. And as many of you will know, this tapestry, this Targaryen Tapestry, is, of course, inspired by the famous Bayeux Tapestry. The Bayeux Tapestry is a 230-foot-long embroidered linen cloth, 230 feet. It's got 58 scenes, and it tells the story of the Norman conquest of England. That occurred in the year 1066, and it was led by William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, who is a large part of the inspiration for Aegon the Conqueror and his conquest of Westeros. William, Duke of Normandy, challenged Harold II, who was then the King of England, and he, I believe, is loosely paralleled by Black Heron Hoare, Harold Heron. And Black Heron, of course, is the Ironborn king who in that day conquered much of the Riverlands, built Harrenhal, committing many atrocities along the way, check out our Harrenhal videos, and then declared himself the king of the islands and the river. So he's the closest thing to a king of Westeros when Aegon and his sisters come from across the water to conquer. Fun fact, the Bayeux Tapestry is technically not a tapestry because it's embroidered. So sometimes it's called the Bayeux Embroidery, although you can still call it the Bayeux Tapestry. It's fine. The scholars won't scoff at you too hard. And it is called the Bayeux Embroidery or Tapestry because it is thought to have been commissioned by Bishop Odo of Bayeux, that's a town in France. And Bishop Odo, hope I'm saying that right, was William's maternal half-brother. So this tapestry is definitely telling the story from the Norman side, or you might say that it is political propaganda, but it's very pretty looking. And if it was commissioned by William's brother, and this all happened in 1066 or so, then that means this thing is almost 1,000 years old. And again, it is still in great condition. The colors are vivid and vibrant. It is on display in a museum in France, and it was, quote, rediscovered by scholars in 1729, where it was being annually displayed in the Bayeux Cathedral in the town of Bayeux. So it's a 230-foot-long tapestry, 58 scenes, almost 1,000 years old. It's quite the thing. And again, it makes just a ton of sense to draw on this tapestry as inspiration for the show, since George already used this history when making the story of Aegon's conquest. So that's one of the things I like the best about George's writing, his use of history, and it's one of the things I like the best about House of the Dragon, how they continue to build on that and deepen those connections. All right, so 11 scenes, and the first one is about the founding of the Valyrian freehold and the creation of the Dragonbond. We start with a single spot of blood staining the fine white linen tapestry. It's the first thing we see, and then gold threads are growing from that spot of blood to create Valyria. The blood pools and grows and starts pouring down the Inaugrion, or whatever, the Valyrian city, just like the Season 1 intro. So once again, we're talking about bloodlines here. Fire and blood, the words of House Targaryen, can also refer to their, quote, golden blood, the golden blood of old Valyria, which has the fire in it, because they are literally the blood of the dragon. They are lizard people. They have dragon DNA in their blood. So yes, the fire is in the blood, and you'll notice all the golden threads are basically bleeding as they weave themselves through the tapestry. So these are the founding bloodlines of Valyria, and as you can see, it flows down from the city, from the Inaugrion, and pools into what looks like kind of a phoenix shape. Shout out to the crow. This really reminds me of the crow a lot. And even more phoenix-like is the dragon itself. Below the blood, it's got wings of flame. And the idea of the phoenix is important because we are talking about the Dragonbond. As we can see, it pans down, and there is a woman sacrificing herself to this dragon, which has a human head. Now, Valyrian sphinxes all look like this. They are dragons with the head of a human. And I have always thought that that is about the Dragonbond and how about the human Targaryens and Valyrians control the dragons. So yes, we can see the woman. She is being stabbed by a man behind her. It looks very Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa-like. And she does seem to be offering her spirit and blood to the dragon, and you can see the head of the dragon, the human head, the blood is flowing towards her hands. So clearly this is a blood sacrifice ritual. She is being sacrificed to the dragon. And the human head of the dragon is the big clue here. The reason the Valyrian sphinxes have human heads is because the Targaryens control their dragons by stuffing human spirits into the dragons. That's it. That's how it's done, and that's what's happening here. The woman is being sacrificed seemingly willingly, and her spirit is being offered up to the human-headed dragon. And what's going to happen is after this, people of her lineage, her children and descendants, will now be able to bond with this dragon and the dragons of this dragon's lineage. This lines up with what we know about Valyria, how the dragons were controlled by different families and monopolized by different families. And this is the explanation behind Valyrian and Targaryen incest. They marry in the family not only to keep the concentration of the dragon blood high, but because anybody that they marry and have kids with then can potentially bond with dragons of their lineage. This is all my theory, of course. This is not fact here. I'm theorizing, but I think this is pretty solid. I've been locking onto this from a few different angles. There's a lemur theory angle of it, and like I said, you really want to check out that Daemon Song video. That's where I went into this in the most depth. So yes, the Sphinxes and this dragon on the tapestry, they have a human head because there are human spirits in the dragons, and that is how the dragon bond, which is a psychic link, is formed. That's the backbone of it. So there's lizard DNA in the people, and there's people spirits in the dragons, and that's how it works. Again, according to theory, but that's what you came here for. So now, interestingly, there are some black candles on the table next to this ritual here. So we have to wonder, are those just random black candles, or are those supposed to be glass candles? And glass candles, of course, are sorceress items, are made of obsidian or dragon glass, about 3 feet tall, and they enable the Valyrian sorcerers essentially to do astral projection, dream implantation, and they could use them like walkie-talkies to talk to each other. That's how Quaithe is contacting Dany in dreams and visions throughout the books. And yeah, these glass candles could be part of this ritual, especially because we just learned recently that in the earliest drafts of A Feast for Crows, Martin was exploring the idea of the glass candles serving as soul jars, which means that sorcerers could essentially tie their spirits to the glass candles, and they could never be permanently killed unless, as long as their candle flame kept burning. We'll have to see if Martin follows up on that and does something similar in future books, but yeah, seeing them here on the tapestry, knowing that glass candles can sort of transmit consciousness, it does kind of make sense that they could be used in a ritual to transport somebody's spirit into a dragon. Now, in book lore, I believe that this spirit stuffing might be accomplished by the aid of the dragonbinder horns. There's a line about the Valyrians controlling their dragons with binding spells and sorceress horns, but I think that's talking about controlling as in establishing control, establishing the dragon bond, not riding on the back of a dragon and blowing a horn every few minutes to tell it to turn left and right or whatever. Binding spells and sorceress horns, I think that's about the creation of the dragon bond. So I'll have a video about that probably after the season. But there are glass candles on the table, so I'll have to think about that. That's very cool. And one of the things I'm going to talk about in that video about Dragonbinder and creating the Dragon Bond is that this is why Euron has a Dragonbinder horn. He's not a Valyrian, but badly wants to be one. He's got the Valyrian armor, and he's trying to be Azor Ahai Reborn, and he clearly wants to steal a dragon. He promised the Ironborn that he will, but he says he's going to use the horn. So how's that going to work? Well, we see Victarion is feeling the lure of the horn. He wants to blow it, kind of like the One Ring, tempting you, even though you shouldn't put it on. So if Victarion blows that horn, I think he could end up being stuffed into Viserion. And then Euron, who is Victarion's kin, would be able to establish a normal blood bond with Viserion. And in theory, if everyone survived all this, then Euron's children and his line could bond with other dragons born from Viserion if Viserion can lay eggs. Anyway, that's all a little far afield, but yes, Dragon Bond stuff, always fun to talk about. And like I said, I did think this was Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa at first glance, and some other people have noticed that too. And that's the thing about Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa, it's always been like a template for a lot of the Valyrian magic. It seems to be like a template for Valyrian steel, which seems to be also created with the use of human sacrifice, just like Lightbringer. And then the idea of sacrificing Nissa Nissa to create Lightbringer is very much a parallel of sacrificing people to create the Dragon Bond, because dragons and Lightbringer are the two weapons that Azor Ahai Reborn is supposed to use to fight the others, and it's pretty obvious that that's what we're going to see, people with flaming swords, and obviously Dany's dragons, Dany and Jon, fighting the others in, something like that. So whether or not this is meant as a reference to Nissa Nissa and Azor Ahai, it does have obvious parallels to any sort of Dragon Bond sorcery, so there you go. It does remind me of Amok's classic Azor and Nissa Nissa artwork, though, I have to say. And then finally, just to circle back on the idea of the Phoenix, of course, is all about being reborn as a fiery, flying, winged thing, so any sort of phoenix imagery attached to the dragons or to Dragonbinder, which it does have phoenix imagery with the hornblower, that's another clue that this is about people being reborn as fiery winged beasts. So we see another couple at the end of the scene, and this time it looks like, I think it's the man who's probably dead or sleeping. There's a lot of blood there, and the woman is holding him. So I don't know who these people are, but it's just probably telling us that the other people sacrificed themselves to dragons or something like that. Let me know if you got a more specific guess, but we can see that these golden bloodlines, the gold thread leaking blood, are now flowing from this final couple into the next scene. So scene 2, this is the Doom, of course. We see the dragons falling from the sky. We see the mountains exploding. The topless towers of Valyria losing their tops. Shout out to the Tower Tarot card, of course. And clearly, they're talking about the Doom a lot on this show, and it has obvious parallels to the idea of the Dance of the Dragons. These are dragonlords destroying themselves, if you will. And Viserys' model city, which looks exactly like this Valyrian city, sort of makes that parallel obvious. Viserys is building a pretend reminiscence of the past kingdom, while his own kingdom is, rotting beneath him, something like that. Now, interestingly, there's no reference to Daenys the Dreamer or Aenar Targaryen that I can find, although, of course, they are the whole reason why the Targaryens survived. Daenys the Dreamer supposedly saw the Doom in a prophecy 12 years before the Doom, and they moved to Dragonstone. Everybody laughed at them, but they survived with 5 dragons, one of whom was Balerion. Vhagar and Meraxes did not come from Valyria. They were born on Dragonstone in the 100 years in between Aenar coming to Dragonstone and Aegon's conquest. And that is the next scene, the third scene. We see the conquerors on their dragons, except for it looks like they put Visenya, the one with the braid, on the silver dragon, which would be Meraxes. So that's an oopsie. I wonder if they'll fix that. I think this is CGI thread, not real thread, so they can reweave it. But yes, guys, put the braid on the other one. The green dragon is Vhagar. That's Visenya's dragon. But we'll overlook that. It is still a pretty impressive intro. So there's the one mistake I found. So silver Meraxes kind of looks white here, and that creates an echo with Dany's dragon colors, which is intended by George. Dany's dragons are, Viserion is cream and gold, but that's close enough to white. Silver, white, is it all the same? Silver wing, sea smoke, they all have similar symbolism. And then, of course, Rhaegal is green, Vhagar is green, and then, Drogon is Balerion, the Black Dread come again. Now, the fourth scene is getting into the conquest itself. It's basically a combination of Harrenhal and the Field of Fire. So first we see a close-up shot of Black Harren with the helmet, and then as it zooms out, we can see he's standing under Harrenhal. And there's the axe, which is a popular weapon of the Ironborn. And then to the sides, we see the armies of House Lannister and Gardner. Those are the 2 biggest and most powerful houses of the Westerlands and the Reach, who basically got almost wiped out. The Gardeners were wiped out, and the Lannisters submitted at the Field of Fire. So you'll notice the 2 shields there. It's a Lannister sigil and a hand sigil. That's the Gardener sigil. So this is basically, an amalgamation of the major battles of the conquest. Then we see the smarter houses, the ones that submitted to the Targaryens without a fight and didn't have their swords melted down to become the Iron Throne. That is House Arryn, House Stark, and House Tully. These are, kind of the more famous houses that everyone knows who submitted, and the most important one is House Stark, and that would be Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt to Aegon the Conqueror. I made a whole video about that. I think Aegon told him about his prophecy, yada, yada, yada. They didn't talk about the prophecy on this episode. Yes, I'm disappointed, still hoping maybe they'll circle back, but I did enjoy Cregan, and he did reference both Torrhen kneeling to Aegon and Jaehaerys and Alysanne visiting the Wall, and the fact that Alysanne's dragon, or apparently in the show canon, both of their dragons refused to fly across the Wall, so that's cool. And in general, I just enjoyed seeing a Stark who believes in the others and takes this whole Wall thing a little more seriously than the Starks of the present day, so that's cool. But enough about Cregan. The shot pans down to show the establishment of King's Landing and the creation of the Targaryen sigil, which of course is something the Targaryens created to be more like the houses of Westeros. And it is often thought that they created the 3-headed dragon, to represent the 3 conquerors and their dragons. However, I believe that it is in fact about the Dragonbond. The song that Daemon sings talks about 2 heads to a third sing. The 2 people singing in the scene are Daemon and Vermithor, and the third head they're singing to is the human spirit in the dragon, like I was saying. So 3 heads of the dragon is probably a very old Valyrian saying about the Dragonbond, and that, I believe, is the origin of the Targaryen sigil. So there you go, trying to bring a little extra insight to the tapestry, but still move fast. Hope you appreciate it. Sixth scene, Maegor dying on the throne, which is pretty cool because it looks a lot like the art of Maegor dying on the throne. Of course, that's a famous piece by Michael Comarch, which you can see here. Very similar to the scene. So before I was saying, the woman being sacrificed to the dragon kind of looks like Amok's famous Nissa Nissa artwork. This, to me, is definitely inspired by Michael Comarch's Maegor dying on the throne. Now, you can see that the swords of the throne are growing around him, but there's one sword in particular cutting him across the neck. And so this highlights the idea that the Iron Throne is a dangerous seat. It is a powerful symbol, obviously. And Aegon intended for that to be, he said that a conqueror should not rest easy. Somebody let Aegon II know, right? You're not supposed to rest easy on that thing. Are those Valerian Kevlar prince clothes there, or are we soon going to see Aegon cutting himself? You're not supposed to be able to sit like that on the thing. And of course, Aegon II's dad, King Viserys, all his trouble started with a cut on the pinky finger, which he got on the throne when he was banishing Daemon from court. So right there you can see the rift inside of House Targaryen tied to the wound that the throne is giving. So yeah, Maegor, he threatened House Targaryen. He did not save House Targaryen, contrary to what you might hear on YouTube sometimes. Anyway, let's not get too lost in that. But yes, this is Maegor dying on the throne, being cut by the swords. And I thought at first that these dragons might be Balerion, Maegor's dragon at the time, and poor Quicksilver, the dragon of Aegon the Uncrowned, who Balerion killed over the God's Eye. However, as it pans down, we can see these are, in fact, Silverwing and Vermithor, the dragons of King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne, who are below Maegor's throne here in the tapestry. The scenes linked together. And then this is not hard to decode the symbolism here. There's a symbol of the seven-pointed star, the symbol of the faith, and a pot of gold. So shout out to Lucky Charms, I guess. But yeah, the point is they unified with the faith after Maegor's war with the faith, and they brought prosperity and peace to the realm. And these kind of look like open fields in the middle. And of course, Jaehaerys and Alysanne began and constructed most of the King's Road, too. So perhaps that's implied here as well. And of course, Jaehaerys and Alysanne were remembered in history as good King Jaehaerys and good Queen Alysanne. So very literal, on-the-nose nicknames, but I think you do have to be pretty good to be remembered that way. And again, Jaehaerys and Alysanne were probably the best monarchs that Westeros ever had. So the eighth scene, of course, easy to recognize, the Great Council of 101 AC, which we saw in the opening of Season 1 of House of the Dragon. There's the fancy chair and old King Jaehaerys, and behind him we can see, I think it was Harold Westerling of the Kingsguard, and there's Corlys Velaryon and the Maester, and most importantly, there is Rhaenys, the queen who never was, who was not chosen. Probably could have avoided some trouble just by picking her here, but instead, we picked Viserys, and you can see Emma rest in peace there next to Viserys as well. Viserys rests in pieces instead. But yeah, this is the Great Council, which was held at Harrenhal. So already you can see Harrenhal has come up twice in the tapestry. That is because Targaryen history flows through Harrenhal many, many times, and that's going to happen a lot on Season 2. We're going to see a lot of scenes. We've already seen Daemon at Harrenhal at some point in this season. And you'll notice in this episode, Daemon and Aemond, they were both talking about taking Harrenhal, establishing a toehold in the Riverlands. They're both seeing the same empty spot on the board, the same high ground, and saying, look, we need to take that first. So we'll see what the show does as far as who does get there first, but we know that it's always rainy and dark at Harrenhal. And if you want to hear some horror stories about the twisted history, I did the Harrenhal live stream with Grey Waste Tim, which you can find on the channel just a couple weeks ago. Also, shout out to Corlys's dreads, which seem to look better this year, I would say. My friend Maynard James Plum pointed out he looks a little more like an old Rasta, which is a very cool vibe for Corlys. So, yeah. So the ninth scene, this is kind of Rhaenyra's wedding, but again, this is a stylized encapsulation of a lot of history. So Rhaenyra is in the black dress to represent her faction being Team Black, and Alicent is in the green dress. In the books, they wore these dresses at the same event. On the show, it's the green dress when Rhaenyra's at the wedding in white, but whatever. It's the green and the black dress. It's the greens and the blacks. And there's a lot of subtle symbolism here. So first of all, Alicent is kind of interrupting the bloodline of House Targaryen. It is flowing from the Great Council to Alicent. She is in between that bloodline and Rhaenyra. So that is sort of just highlighting the strife that Viserys caused by, it's not really Alicent's fault, but by Viserys remarrying and creating a second family of heirs after he named Rhaenyra the heir. We can see that as soon as that child was born, as soon as baby Aegon was born, the Hightowers were like, yeah, that's the future king right there. So this rebellion has been in the works for a long time, and that is highlighted by the sort of, positioning in this scene here. Another reason why this isn't literally the wedding is you'll notice the people at the table, not all of them were at the wedding. So, for example, Team Black is on top, and we see Daemon, Rhaenys, and Corlys, who were at the wedding, but then also Rhaenyra's children, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey, who were not born yet. So then on the bottom, that's Team Green table. Moving from left to right, we have Helaena dressed in gold, different from the rest of her family. And then King Aegon, Aemond One-Eye with the patch, Criston Cole in white, and Otto with his black sable mantle. Now, my biggest question about this scene is, what is this black thing that is sort of growing between the blood link, the bloodline going from Alicent to Rhaenyra? I guess this is like the shadow of war. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be something more literal, but yeah, it's dark. It's covering up the bloodline. So I think it's some sort of shadow that's growing between these two women that is threatening the succession, something like that. So then we have this very interesting 10th scene. It begins with this new golden sigil. You can't really see, it's just a golden circle, but you can tell from the next scene when we see it on King Aegon's chest that this is his golden dragon symbol. And this looks even more like his book canon sigil, which is gold on black. It's gold on green in the show. I actually prefer the gold on green. But yes, this is the beginning of this other bloodline. So the blood is growing, the sigil is happening, and there is the usurping King Aegon, at least usurping from the perspective of Team Black, on the Iron Throne. And then here is Rhaenyra with, Dragonmont behind her. So she's on her own throne on Dragonstone, depicting the two choices. And then it zooms out to show the two hands, the green hand and the black hand. You can see the lava sort of dividing them, which again definitely is meant to call back to the doom of Valyria and the idea that this fire in the blood, this fiery connection to dragons, can go one of two ways. And if the House of the Dragon is divided, then this will explode into fire and blood, bloody civil war feud. That's what the show's about. So green hand and black hand, you can see we've got dragons flying from the black hand because Rhaenyra sent out her children as envoys on dragons. And you can see these are meant to look like Arrax and Vermax. And the red dragon could either be Melis or Caraxes. I say Melis because Melis has been sent out to patrol. So those are the three, that's Rhaenyra's first move, is sending those three dragons out. Now, Team Green, Otto is sending out ravens, right? He's talking about that in the episode, sending out ravens everywhere, calling everyone to come and submit to Aegon. So this is actually showing us the opening moves in the war, as is the next scene. But we'll get to that. Real quick, you can see the sigils filling in around Aegon and Rhaenyra. And on the right are the houses allied with Rhaenyra. We can see the Velaryons. We can see the Tullys. I think that's Rosby and Stokeworth, I believe. It's hard to tell with the thread. And then on the left side, you can see Baratheon, the Hightower, Lannister. And I believe that might be Tyrell. Hard to say. You guys let me know what those last couple ones are. But you get it. These are the involved houses. They are being forced to choose. And then, yes, here is the 11th scene. It is, of course, the Chomp. We see huge Vhagar, her tail fills in, becomes a circle around the scene, almost like the Targaryen sigil or like an Ouroboros. And inside is the poor, chomped body of Arrax, whose wing they found in the episode. Very emotional scene. Emma's acting was incredible. Obviously, we voted that scene of the week on the after party. And yeah, the dragon making the sad sounds. That was tough. And they did a good job of connecting this season to last season with that scene and driving home the tragedy of this. They did a good job with that. So there is poor Luke tumbling. Of course, he did not tumble in the story. He was chomped, but they've got to show his presence in the scene. This tapestry is symbolic. So there you go. There is Luke tumbling. There is Vhagar and Arrax. And there is Aemond One-Eye, or at least his white hair we can see riding on the back of Vhagar. Now, the coolest thing about this is this means that they will probably be updating the tapestry as the story goes, right? If they're showing us these two moves, the opening communications from the two sides, and then, Storm's End, that means that we'll probably see maybe blood and cheese represented on the tapestry next, or maybe it's only major battles, but we'll have to see. because clearly there is a lot of tapestry left, and it is rolling up to the empty throne room with the throne in silhouette. So this is pretty easy to decode symbolism. The story of House of the Dragon is history to us, of course, since our story is, 170 years in the future. So this is history being written, and that's just really good storytelling here. And that does make me think they're going to continue to fill in the history as it goes, leading up to this throne. And there it is. That's the tapestry. This is the story of House of the Dragon. It is being written as we go, and I probably do like this one a little better than last year. I was one of the defenders of the blood flowing around the city last year. I thought it was cool, but this is cooler, and I really liked the historical tie-in to the Bayeux Tapestry. So I hope you enjoyed that little bit of background history, and I hope you enjoyed my analysis of the tapestry. And again, if you did not join us for the after party last week, then we know you do have choices out there, but come check us out. Come give us a try. Me and Grilled Nuddles and Grey Waist Tim will be there after every episode, going live on my channel, usually only about 5 minutes after the episode is over. So come join us at the after party. You are invited. You don't need an address or a phone number or anything, and the police will not show up, I promise. So thanks a lot, and I will see you next Sunday. Oh, and maybe I'll have an Allison video out later this week too. We'll see. I got a take on Allison, so yeah. Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching.